Hello, this is Professor Albrecht Classen, University Distinguished Professor at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And it is my pleasure today to present, as you will see, this talk, which is called AI as an indicator of the current paradigm shift in upper level education, problems and responses. I will talk very briefly on this recorded PowerPoint because I really want to explain the details more tomorrow at 11:30 London time, which will be 4:30 my time, 4:30 a.m. by the way. So just a quick outline to prepare you all for what I will say in case there are problems. I want to reflect on the issues of AI in upper education, particularly in the field of the humanities, in areas of student papers. I will reflect upon those and see to what extent there are advantages or disadvantages, problems, and even dangers, and how we in the humanities at this point respond. I emphasize that we are, of course, in a paradigm shift that affects all of education, and AI is one of the catalysts that brings about this change. Of course, we have been in similar situations before, and we will also encounter those in the future. So because technology moves on all the time, whether we go along with it or not. So the question really is how we respond to it, how we deal with it, engage with it critically, and try not to be troglodyte, and instead think about what it entails, what advantages there are, and what disadvantages, in particular in the upper education. It is a tool that has huge impact, and we hear already that many branches in the industry, in governmental organizations or non-governmental organizations, in logistics, in medicine, in other fields, have really profited from it already very successfully, since AI can take over a lot of work that is very mechanical and not really very effectively done by humans. But these are technical aspects, whereas I am looking at a very different dimension, namely upper education, higher education, critical writing, and the development of critical thought, arguments, research. We also face this huge question of how scholarship will change in the near future and what AI will do for us. And so this is an issue that concerns all of us. So I like to throw in the most important word, authenticity, and wonder what that means in face of AI, and think about previous impact of technology. The computer, of course, has changed a lot of things. The paradigm shift with the computer, then the internet, and the web and so forth has been with us, and we are all struggling to get along and make the best out of it. So sometimes we need to learn about the technology to understand really how it works and whether we can utilize it for our purposes or not. So there are always two sides to it. So the AI is not the panacea of everything. And yet it is our choice as human beings to accept what is productive for us and what might actually hurt us or harm us as learners. So previously we have used spell checkers, Grammarly, for example. We use search engines. And what I find most exciting in my field is the digitization of documents, particularly in my case, medieval manuscripts, images, letters, from the Middle Ages, 17th century, 19th century, 20th century, making a huge storehouse available globally. The one problem I see is with ebooks. most libraries like to resort to ebooks. And my experience as an editor, as a reader, as a researcher is that we face here a huge problem because ebooks make it very difficult to do deep readings. But I don't want to go much more into details. But AI can, for example, help us very beautifully in doing very mechanical, robotic search for bibliographies on specific topics. Even my own paper, for example, that one that I present has been augmented with computer help, namely the design of the pages, the choice of images, the arrangement of words. But all of that is really pertaining to the format, has nothing to do with the content itself. So my key thing here is AI in writing, and I would like to emphasize that most of our students are required to produce written work, papers, because through that activity, they develop their own thought patterns. But I need to explain to my students why that is important and what they really learn. So transparency is extremely important when we ask the question, why do we use AI or why do we not do that? Human learning is very much based on writing itself, and I need to explain that. So a structure of a comment paper we normally expect from students consists simply of a title, a thesis, arguments based on the data, and then the conclusions. That all needs to be rounded off with the bibliography. AI can do wonders there. Eloquence, that means it needs to be well written and a good sentence structure, logic, and grammar needs to be all right. And yet the key component is the critical thinking. We need to see how students engage with the material they have learned and how they are able then to formulate their responses. I can well see, for example, that AI can help with the development of a good title, maybe better wording, maybe more precise, maybe also with the bibliography, with eloquence, with grammar and so forth, and logic. But the key component, namely the argument, but also the thesis and the conclusion, are very specifically human-based. That's where the actual learning is demonstrated. We need to also explain very clearly to our students what the learning outcomes and expectations are, so that in a good paper we observe a student development in his own or her own writing skills, his own critical writing skills. And so it is basically the same thing with scholarly papers. I myself would be ashamed if I used AI to write my papers. I would be ashamed if I were caught having plagiarized. That's absolutely against my own principle and honor as a scholar. So that is something students have to think very hard. Why do they do this, and what constitutes plagiarism, and what does AI do if a student uses that? Is that still plagiarism or not? AI, of course, does not copy text, but it culls from many texts and uses those as a reservoir, as a quarry in a way. And so it's very hard. So it seems for us as readers, as graders, to determine whether anything is plagiarized or authentic. But I have found out, for example, I tested for this paper, case, I had to write an article about the famous Princess Elizabeth of Thuringia, the first founder of a hospital in the early 13th century. It was an article for a new lexicon or literary encyclopedia online. And then I asked the ChatGPT to write the same article. And it was a horrendous mishmash of data, of faulty statements, wrong dates, very inconclusive, not fully logical, inexplicable and ultimately it was a disaster. I was in a way quite happy with that outcome because it confirmed to me in a very simple case the problems that this culling from thousands of different documents online can result in. I just noticed that there were some, of course, global conclusions, but they were very diffuse, ambiguous, and inconclusive ultimately. So AI did really do a disservice to my own purpose, and I'm happy to confirm this through my own experiment, because ultimately we have a distorted and confusing, barely correct narrative portrait of this famous person. So one more time, the purpose of creating a document, a paper, is to make our students develop their creativity, their critical thinking, and their writing abilities. And I have three metaphors to explain where the danger of AI might come in. When I want to develop physical or do physical activities and then develop a robot to do that for me, no new muscles will grow on my body. If I want to become the best piano player and have a robot playing the music while I'm not even practicing, I will never turn into a good musician myself. Or when I want to learn a foreign language and I use AI to do that, then I might be able in a practical, technical way to communicate, but I do not really learn that foreign language at all because everything goes through trial and error experiment. In art, that's maybe a fourth example. I can, of course, ask a computer to or AI to create a painting according to my specifications. And it might be perfect in technical sense, but it's certainly not my artwork. And one can use AI probably for to include elements, but ultimately the creative aspect is not working well. So then I turned to writing haiku. I write haiku quite a lot, and so I asked AI to write a haiku, and the result was this. And then I wrote my own in response. On the left, you see AI. On the right, you see what I have written. And of course, you are the judge to evaluate, but I think silent circuits hum, wisdom flows through coded veins, digital dawn breaks. Doesn't make sense. Silence upon us, we partake in endless quests, ever dusk to dawn. I believe that makes sense, and there are big, important questions raised. AI can be very useful in translations, particularly in global communication, but it also represents huge problems because when speakers of different languages address issues such as freedom, democracy, creativity, faith, spirituality, the AI would ignore lots of nuances of meaning and could cause incredible cultural miscommunication. These examples. What is honor? How does AI fully understand that? Or how would you render finamos or minne in a modern language, which we never translate, into a universal English phrase? Can AI really do that without the understanding of the endless nuances? So the key components for critical writing are authenticity, creativity, innovation, consistency, and truth, of course. AI, of course, creates lots of things. AI has no morals, no ethics, no concerns, no legal consciousness, and just produces according to our clues given or cues. So I think it is a very dangerous tool at this point. It might improve in the future, and there are, of course, a lot of purposes for AI, but in, let's say, data collecting, big data, resourcing. But what I notice AI does in critical writing right now is using a lot of subordinated conjunctions such as while, whereas, although, contrary to, or however, and all those convey a false sense of critical acumen, balancing of different opinions, and thereby presenting allegedly a well-balanced scholarly perspective. But in all cases I have seen so far, it becomes a vicious cycle without any clear outcome because there is no thesis at the end. So I think I wrap this up now very quickly. I will have a little bit more time tomorrow and just simply have a couple of more final points which repeats these things and end up on this note that what we need to work with when we teach is to establish authenticity and to get really then the person writing a critical paper. That is the learning, not using a machine to do that, but to present paper yourself. I can refer to this very recent study that had just appeared and argued also very strongly against the use of AI, and have this quote, but I will go into that tomorrow. And I would, of course, openly admit there are certainly advantages and disadvantages. I have focused on the disadvantages, but of course, in linguistic analysis, whenever big data are used, then there can be advantages. But in general, for me, AI is anathema to critical writing, to critical thinking. It might change in the future, and I close hereby and thank you very much. So I stop sharing and stop recording. Oh, I'm right here. Not quite sure what happened.
Yeah, hello, hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm very good, but we said 11:30, which is my time, 4:30, and
Yeah,
so
because of absence of few speakers, I have forwarded your talk.
yeah, I noticed that. But I would have a couple of things I would like to add because I had to
Yeah.
close too early. Could you explain to me why you started my talk before I was even here?
Yeah, actually, few speakers were absent. That's the reason I have forwarded your talk. Now
But
you
you
can
said,
share your now you can share your talk and can give it through the live also.
okay. So do you want me to start from the beginning or just wrap it up?
You can start from the beginning or you can give your explanation throughout. You have a time for 15 more minutes.
So then let me ask, has the audience heard then the whole talk already?
Yeah, oh, sorry, come again.
Well, for me, it's now 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm supposed to start speaking at 4:30, your time 11:30. So I am confused about what is going on here.
Actually, the one speaker has not available. That's the reason I have forwarded the before your talk, before half an hour.
See, you started early. I see. Okay. Then let me at least go to one of the slides that I could not really address. And this is very interesting and maybe valuable to wrap it up because I referred to this one article. Let me go back. Let me see. Can you see now? I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Can
Yes,
you
we can
see?
see your screen.
Yeah, very good. Okay. So this is an article that just appeared maybe a week ago by two experts in the field, by Suchenko, Alexandra Suchenko, and Olena Yatsenko. A human, all too human, do we lose free spirit in the digital age, which appeared in this journal Humanities. It's an online journal. I am the editor-in-chief of this paper, and what they do is a very interesting approach, which I would like to elaborate just a little bit more since we have extra time. They turned to philosophical reflections offered a long time ago, about 1895, by Friedrich Nietzsche, a major German philosopher who is regarded today as one of the leading voices in the field. Um, and they point out a number of aspects that he already addressed and which really mean quite a lot for them, and that, as I will then exemplify, for them, one of the key dangers is that when we turn too much to mechanized tools or world, then we are in the danger of losing our human creativity. And we turn to nothing but a cog in the wheel. And so what I wanted to do, at least to give you a quote, let me move this a little bit to the side. So let me read this quote. This strive toward perfection risks diminishing the richness of ethical life, which depends on the ability to acknowledge moral ambiguities, make mistakes, and learn from them. Nietzsche warns against the suppression of individual will and creativity, arguing that the true ethical engagement arises from the freedom to err and reflect on those errors. Therefore, the ethics of technology should not aim to eradicate human flaws, but instead recognize the irreplaceable role they play in shaping moral consciousness and fostering a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. This perspective calls for a technological future that preserves room for human spontaneity, allowing for mistakes that lead to growth rather than imposing rigid moral codes that reduce human experience to mechanical precision. And I think that is a very valid call for action. I do not want, of course, and I repeat what I said before in the recorded PowerPoint, but let me repeat that and expand on that just a little bit. So I'm not an opponent to AI or to the use of computers at all. It all depends on the context, the purpose. And what we really need to do as teachers is to reflect very carefully upon what it means to utilize AI, for what purpose, in what context. It is a very tempting tool. Students know that they can save a lot of time, but as I said in the first slide, when you want to learn, for example, a foreign language, and you just use an AI to translate everything for you in a perfect way, then you do not learn it at all. So if we combine that, and that is sort of my call or my claim here in this whole context, if we know how to combine AI with our human instincts and concerns, flaws, but attempts, and we need to do those attempts. We can, of course, get a lot of corrections. I do that all the time myself. You know, when I write papers, then Grammarly helps me to fix a lot of different things. But so I think this combination of both machine and the human brain is probably some of the things that will happen in the future. At the moment, AI is, however, for most younger students, anathema to the learning goals of critical writing, at least for now. And you have heard the other examples. I sort of asked the AI to write an article for me. And I had written that article myself before, so I was completely informed about the material. Just sort of to repeat a little bit, this was this slide. So I wrote this article about Elizabeth of Thuringia, a very famous person. I had to study a lot of different sources to come up with the best results. And AI also produced an article, but it was, as I say here, highly vague, only seemingly correct, a lot of mistakes, and anyone who would have submitted that piece of AI-generated text would have revealed immediately that he or she did not do the job herself. And so there were a lot of mistakes. In the future, that might, of course, change. AI probably will get much, much better in the course of time. And the more input we give AI, the better it will become. But ultimately, the purpose of my talk still is to warn about abandoning the human component and turning over to the machine and without our own human input. So I think maybe that is then my warning about it. And I think we can end on this then, although I feel a little bit short-shrifted, but that's okay. And maybe we can open thereby the floor and we have more time for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Albert. Thank you so much. Delegates, do you have any queries regarding the presentation? Dr. Albert is there to assess you.
I was expecting actually a bit of questions because most other speakers, as I saw from the program, are in the technical field. I come from outside, so there might be questions. But I think what we do in all the technological developments is, of course, making that tool available for humans, not to replace humans. So I would argue if we can use AI to enhance what we do as humans, by all means. But if we replace humans with AI, we really impoverish our own existence, our own culture. So I try to present my topic from a pedagogical point of view. So maybe there could be questions. Anyone might want to question what I had to say. I would be very happy to respond. Thank you.